you take those issues that are very concerning to people, even if they don't openly say it, they're thinking it, the polls show that, and then you throw a bad economy on that, and I think you really have a recipe for disaster for whoever's in charge. And right now, that happens to be Joe Biden. So it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out.
Yeah, there's a general feeling of chaos and that things have kind of gone off the rails, especially in the cultural realm. Welcome to Stakelbeck Tonight. I'm Erick Stakelbeck, and we just witnessed an absolute political earthquake in Europe, one that could soon be felt right here in the United States. Over the weekend, 27 nations went to the polls to vote in European parliamentary elections. Now, the European Parliament is the main legislative body of the European Union, or EU, and it wields tremendous power over the direction of the continent. For years, that direction has been overwhelmingly socialist, secular, globalist, and open borders, with a skeptical eye towards the United States and a confrontational tone towards Israel. But that may have just changed dramatically. In country after country, right-wing parties made tremendous gains in the European elections, while the left suffered major defeats. German Chancellor Olaf Scholz's party lost big, and Belgium's prime minister announced his resignation after his party was trounced at the polls. In France, Emmanuel Macron called for new national elections after right-wing parties dominated there. The bottom line is that the European Union, which has basically been a socialist, bureaucratic megastate since its inception, could now be shifting. The people have spoken. And poll after poll showed that mass immigration played a major role in their vote. The left in Europe has let in millions of Muslim immigrants who have slowly changed the face of the continent. Folks, just look at the numbers. Some 10% of France's total population is Muslim, over 6% in Germany, over 7% in the Netherlands and in Belgium, and over 8% in Sweden. It's all happened very fast, and it's led to major culture clashes in cities and towns across Europe, not to mention a major rise in anti-Semitism. And the people of Europe are fed up. By the way, the United Kingdom, which famously left the EU back in 2016, will also hold elections in July. Now, things don't look as promising for conservatives there, but in the meantime, the results in Europe have predictably sparked a mainstream media meltdown with accusations of a far-right insurrection. Sounds a lot like charges of Christian nationalism here in the U.S. directed towards anyone who loves God and country, the kind of people who used to be called patriots. So, could the election results in Europe be duplicated here in the United States in November? Are the American people fed up with socialism, wokeism, open borders, and radical secularism? We're about to find out. He's host of the Bible's Guide to Surviving the Election podcast, and he's here to share some thoughts on how Christians can maintain a higher ground in the craziness of this election season. Journalist Billy Hallowell is with us now. Billy, pivotal election, obviously, for our country and for people of faith coming up this November. So much on the line. Things are so heated. How can we as Christians stay the course as ambassadors for Christ amid all the madness?
Yeah, I mean, that's the question, right? Because I think right now there's so much emotion. And I know for me, whenever there's emotion, that can often lead us to say or do the wrong thing. And I keep coming back to, and this is a challenge for me, and I'll be fully honest, the reason I launched the podcast is because I needed to hold myself accountable throughout this year as we're journeying through this, getting to the election, to make sure that I'm putting Jesus first. You know, I think a lot of us, and you and I have both worked in the news business for a long time. We've seen a lot of stories. We know the impact those stories have. But when the emotions get going again, we end up sometimes acting out of the flesh or kind of pushing our faith to the side and making sort of winning the argument the primary. And that needs to be the secondary or tertiary. We need to make sure we're putting our faith first. And so as simple of an answer as that is, it's staying in the Word and making sure that we're putting Jesus first and that we're reflecting that decision in all we say and do.
Yeah, it's interesting, Billy, because you know that non-believers, the non-believing world, they're ready to pounce when they see Christians kind of stepping out of turn and acting out and not acting in a Christ-like manner. Look, none of us are perfect, obviously, but eyes are on us, I guess you would say, especially in a season of heightened tension like this. And when we drop the ball, it has larger repercussions, it seems, for the entire body of Christ in our image to the world and our witness.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And here's the thing that I've been really convicted on, and I think this is important for all of us to consider. We should absolutely have opinions. I know there's a camp of people who say, "Oh, Christians shouldn't get involved in politics. The kingdom, Jesus's kingdom, is not of this world." And you have these arguments that sort of try to dissuade people from being political. I think we should absolutely have opinions about issues, about politics. That's completely fine. It's what we do with those opinions. And one of the things for me that is also convicting in speaking with a lot of unbelievers around me, whether it's friends or family or others, is my political opinion or the thing that I'm saying the stumbling block that's going to prevent them from seeing the truth. I often will think about that. Am I addressing this issue the right way? Am I saying this thing the right way? Or am I speaking again without putting Jesus first? Because I don't want to say or do things. And again, I'm not saying we should conceal or hide what we believe, but what I am saying is how we present that and what we are saying. The primary goal should not be to convert somebody to become a Republican or a Democrat or whatever it is you believe. If you're a Christian, the primary goal should be to point people to Christ, because that is what matters most. So we've got to get those priorities in order and really consider, others' salvation as well in that process.
Bill, you do such a great job of covering the hot button cultural issues, not only in your podcast, but in your great work at CBN News and elsewhere. What do you see is some of the major issues that Christians should be concerned about and should really put first and foremost as they head to the polls this November?
Yeah, there are so many issues, right? There's always the economy. You have the issues that are standard, that are always going to be there. And right now, the economy, obviously, great. The stock market's been great for a lot of people, but the real issues is that people cannot afford their food. They cannot afford gas. They cannot afford the basics. Bills are up $1,000, a month on average, it seems, for families. So people are really feeling that pain. But from the Christian perspective, look, there are so many issues. It's fascinating to see where we are on the abortion front, right? With Roe being overturned, with Dobbs. Really what we now have are 50 different battles in 50 different states. That issue has sort of kicked up into high gear. That's going to continue to be an issue, but we have a number of other big things going on. I think for me, the most interesting issue to emerge really is education. Education has always been a big issue, but not to this level and not on the particulars of what we're seeing. During COVID, parents going out to school board meetings, parents making their voice heard, a lot of frustration over what's being taught, a lot of debate over some of the gender ideology. And that sort of brings me into the other big issue of gender. We're seeing exploding percentages of young people identify as something other than the gender, the sex that they were born with. This is a major issue, and it should be very concerning to Christians, particularly when it comes to children. And also, I would note, when you look to Europe is moving away from these things. And yet America, we're still doing this. We're still transitioning children. We're putting them through these horrific experiments. So these are just some of the issues that I think are actually going to have big sway in the election.
Yeah, Billy, it's interesting. In the beginning, the opening monologue here in this show, I talked about the results in the European parliamentary elections over the weekend, a real shift to the right in Europe. Do you get the sense, it seems there's a sense of being fed up in Europe? Do you get the sense, we have about a minute left, that there is some pushback here in the U.S. as well, where people are fed up with children being targeted, as you just laid out, and the gender madness? Do you think there is a reckoning perhaps coming?
Absolutely, because I think if you take that and the icing on that cake is the economy, right? You have a lot of strange issues with a lot of very odd ideas that are being dominant within the ruling party right now in the U.S. You take those issues that are very concerning to people, even if they don't openly say it, they're thinking it, the polls show that, and then you throw a bad economy on that, and I think you really have a recipe for disaster for whoever's in charge. And right now, that happens to be Joe Biden. So it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out.
Yeah, there's a general feeling of chaos and that things have kind of gone off the rails, especially in the cultural realm. And Billy, that's why we're so glad you are on top of it, covering it. The great new podcast, of course, across social media, folks. Follow Billy on X, Instagram, everywhere. Billy, great stuff. And wherever you get your podcasts, you can check them out as well. Hey, we'll have you back in soon, Billy, to keep an eye on all of this. You've got your finger on the pulse of what's happening in the culture in our country. God bless, my friend. Stakelbeck Tonight, my all-new nightly series on current events through a bold biblical lens. Make sure you hit the subscribe button so you never miss an upload, and tap the bell icon so you're notified every time a new video is posted. And don't forget to share your thoughts, insights, and comments below. Thanks for watching, and God bless.